Hello, my name is Duncan Will. I'm an accounting and auditing loss prevention specialist with Cameco Mutual Insurance. Trending risk management issues currently are the Employee Retention Credit and the Corporate Transparency Act. The Employee Retention Credit because, the IRS has named it number one on its dirty dozen list of scams. And CPAs have a lot of clients that have heard about this opportunity to get the Employee Retention Credit, and God bless if they're entitled to it. But if they're not, and somebody's basically convinced them they are, the CPA that has that person as a client or that corporation as a client is putting themselves at risk. The client comes to it and says, hey, good news, I've got this $1.5 million credit. And the CPA is now back on their heels. Gosh, are they entitled to that? If I end up doing the required amended income tax return for that, am I putting myself at risk? My advice to CPAs in that situation are to make sure they get written documentation acknowledgement from their clients that, no, we didn't advise you to do that. You ended up getting this advice from somebody else. We've alerted you that the IRS has this as it's one of its dirty dozen. And quite frankly, if you're not entitled to it, this could end up being clawed back. And there's income tax associated with that. And worse yet, there's this 5-year statute of limitations on the credit and only a 3-year statute of limitations on the amended income tax return that is compelled by having amended the payroll tax return. So with that in mind, make sure they're aware of that. And then, go ahead and amend that income tax return for them. But make sure if you think that the client is doing this because it's a lack of integrity on their part, disengage from that client. You don't want them. But if it's merely that they misunderstood, have that acknowledgement from them that this wasn't what you advised them to do and they have chosen to do that. Because quite frankly, amending that income tax return is something that they are compelled to do. The fact that they amended that income tax return or took that credit, amended that payroll tax return and or took that credit is what requires that income tax return to be amended. Doing that shouldn't pose a problem for the CPA. What is the government going to do? Tax or penalize somebody for paying too much in the way of tax? But make sure that client knows that they could end up having that statute of limitations expire on that income tax return after the 3-year statute of limitations expires on the payroll tax return. The other issue I mentioned trending is the Corporate Transparency Act. That doesn't take effect until 2024 and 2025 as well. The idea being if it's an existing client, then you got till 2025 entity that's subject to it. But a lot of practitioners may be thinking this is something that they are required to end up addressing. No, they're not. They're engaged to do an engagement letter for a financial statement, for doing an income tax return. Well, scope it out if you weren't planning on doing the Corporate Transparency Act guidance. If you are thinking that you don't want to be doing it because it would be the unlawful practice of law, it's really a legal issue as to whether or not they're required to do it, well beyond this conversation to address. But if you're not going to be doing it, scope it out in your tax engagement letter to say, no, our engagement does not address that and you'll need to seek the guidance of a qualified attorney. Those are the two hottest topics right now from risk management from my perspective. The body of knowledge for CPAs is ever expanding. So keeping current. Many people ask me, what do you need to be doing to avoid risk management issues? Keep current. Body of knowledge is ever expanding and it's never going to be less than it is today. So learn. New regulations come out. Be willing to accept that as you get older. Sorry, I have the gray hair. I'm a baby boomer. We're always accused of just doing, never wanting things to change. Hey, it's a dynamic world out there. There's a lot of things that are changing and you got to be able to embrace that. Learn from that. Get the fundamentals from what you've always had, but be willing to learn more. I'm always asked whether I want CPE credit from what I end up doing. I don't need it. I've got plenty of CPE credit, and I hope that the audience out there is trying to get as much as possible. That's what makes them safest, is learning more. Regulations change all the time, and have somebody to be able to advise. You can't keep current on all that. I'm going to tell you, listen to podcasts too. Somebody else out there that is a world's authority is going to end up getting the nuggets that you need. So find the topics of interest to you and pursue those. Recognizing you can't know everything. And since that body of knowledge is ever expanding, when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you're a CPA, you should know this. Recognize, no, the body of knowledge is so huge, you have to be willing to say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. There are a lot of takeaways from risk management that people should be considering. The best one is to be the best you can possibly be, and that means to keep current on what's out there. Within your own organization, be receptive, have an open door policy, and that means whether it's MS Teams or Zoom, be willing to be touching base with colleagues, be willing to say what you don't know. Oftentimes it can be embarrassing. No, the idea of if you're willing, whether at the top of the heap or at the bottom of the heap, to be able to say what you don't know, other people will respect you all the more. And your willingness to learn by confessing what you don't know, and it's outside of your comfort zone, is the best way to go. Risk management wise, don't end up stepping outside of your boundaries. If you've got this niche area you're practicing in, stay within it. Don't go outside of it. If you're trying to be a generalist, quite frankly, CPAs get themselves in a lot of trouble that way. I would encourage practitioners out there to develop a niche, encourage those that work with them to develop a niche. And the idea there is, to the extent that you've got that niche, you're going to have less chance of doing something wrong because you know it, and you're going to be able to bill more for it. And to the extent that you team with other people that have those niches, you can end up covering the expanse of the profession, but with people that are experts in each of those areas. Risk management is learning as much as possible and being willing to share it.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and click the notification bell to be the first to view GSCPA videos. Follow us on other social media for even more society news.